What is up, everybody? Welcome into the show. You're watching the San Francisco 49ers Report. My name is Chase Sr. Hope you're all having a fantastic day. Coming up here on the show, is Robert Saleh going to leave the Niners after this year to get another head coaching job? Also, Mac Jones trade buzz really starting to heat up for some quarterback-needy teams as they look ahead to the 2026 offseason in search of a new signal caller. And let's begin here with topic number one, talking about the Niners defensive coordinator in Saleh. Will he get some head coaching buzz this offseason? I think it's inevitable. And if he leaves the Niners after this year for the second time, it would not surprise me at all. I think Robert Saleh is a really good head coaching candidate for some rebuilding teams and for teams who could be in search of a new head coach. And already there are a few openings across the NFL and more to come. Brian Daboll got fired. Brian Callahan got fired. So already Tennessee, New York Giants looking for a new head coach. And I think that Saleh could fit the mold for a couple of different organizations. But I think from his standpoint, he's looking at some of these jobs and he's saying, I was with the New York Jets, poorly run organization, bad owner, perennial losers. There was no stability. There was no structure. And I got canned early last year. I think if I'm Saleh, I want to go somewhere where my footing is a little bit more stable beneath me. But why I think Saleh is a good candidate, he's obviously a great defensive mind. He has leadership qualities that you want and value in a head coach. His players respect him. They play hard. He got fired by the Jets. Even some of the defensive players with New York still talk him up. Some players who were with the Niners, now with other teams like Eric Armstead, they are very complimentary toward Robert Saleh. I also really like Saleh's energy and his commanding presence. And I think that because he has connections to the Kyle Shanahan tree, the Sean McVay tree, and his experience at the NFL level, he could put together a really quality coaching staff. And when Saleh was with the Jets, I know some casuals will look at the win-loss record and they'll say, he sucks as a head coach. There's no way that he could work out for a different organization. The defense, which is his specialty, was never the issue. It was a very high-performing unit. And some players had career years under Robert Saleh. He developed them and maximized them into being excellent players on that side of the ball. The issue with the Jets, ownership, Woody Johnson is a fraud, and they never got the quarterback position right. Zach Wilson, overdrafted. I never liked the fit of growing up in Utah, going to BYU, and then playing for the New York Jets. That is a culture shock right there. And it turns out that he was also a pretty raw football player. And then the Jets made that move for Aaron Rodgers, and Aaron Rodgers, 4 plays in, pops his Achilles. And then last year, it just wasn't a good situation, and Saleh didn't even last the season. Now, a big component here is that Saleh has connections to the Shanahan and McVay tree. So he can hire a good offensive coordinator, and he could bring an OC with him who's able to develop and maximize a quarterback if he goes to a team that drafts a quarterback early. Even if that team has a quarterback in place who they like, but they just happen to fire their head coach and brought in Saleh as a new head coach, I think that OC paired with a quarterback in place would be able to put together an offensive scheme, and they'd be able to find some offensive success. And if they found offensive success, I trust and I believe in Robert Saleh to put together a really good defense. Now, here's what Albert Breer, NFL insider for Sports Illustrated, said about the chances of Saleh getting a head coaching job. He said, I think Saleh is at least going to elicit interest and may well land a job. He'll interview well. He's very close with a lot of the Shanahan-McVay tree offensive coaches, so finding a good OC won't be a chore, and he'll be able to energize a franchise that's fallen on hard times. I could see the Titans taking a long look at him, paired potentially with Mike McDaniel if he doesn't make it in Miami, or Mike LaFleur to run the offense. If Saleh's out for the Niners, I know current Falcons defensive coordinator Jeff Ulbrich would be very high on Kyle Shanahan's list. Whether he actually becomes available is another question. He likely won't. So my guess is Gus Bradley, who's currently in-house with the Niners. He would probably be the guy. Shanahan has grown to really like him, and he'd be able to take the baton pretty easily from Saleh, whom he mentored years ago. I think Jeff Ulbrich could become available because I think that Falcons coaching staff is on thin ice. And if it's not Ulbrich, look out for Raheem Morris, who Kyle Shanahan really likes, but wouldn't surprise me if Sean McVay brought back Raheem Morris if he were to lose his current defensive coordinator in Chris Shula, who could end up being a head coach for a team like the New York Giants. Now, you look at how the Niners stack up here on offense, on defense, mainly with the topic of conversation today. We're focusing in on defense here because we're discussing Saleh and the possibilities behind him leaving after this year. I think he's done a really good job considering the circumstances, right? Losing Nick Bosa and Fred Warner, two of the top players in football and two all-time guys, doesn't make your job as a DC easy, right? Having to play a lot of young players is also a difficult task. Yet the Niners, despite everything that's gone against them on defense this year, 15th in points per game at 22.9. Another number that I like there, 16th in red zone touchdown efficiency. Obviously, if Saleh were to leave, this would suck for the Niners. Saleh's done a tremendous job this year with what he's been given. The players on the roster, they love him for the defensive mind that he possesses, for the energy, the swagger that he has on that sideline, the communicator that he is. And I think something that's not talked about much is how he over time has been able to adapt and evolve his defensive thinking, defensive mindset, because he has a very good pulse on some of the nuances and some of the modern day offensive concepts. Why a team might not hire Robert Saleh. I told you earlier why I think he's a good candidate if a team wants an offensive mind. And that's the route that I would go if I were a general manager looking for a head coach, if I were an owner looking for a head coach. Because you can land a really good defensive coach to be your head coach. The issue, though, is if that defensive head coach hits on an offensive coordinator and that offensive coordinator has that offense humming, he's going to leave for a head coaching job. And then you're constantly looking for new OCs. And when that OC has success, they will then get poached by a different team who's looking for an offensive-minded head coach. The other thing, too, for teams looking for head coaches right now, a lot of these teams might be in a position to draft a young quarterback. And they want to draft a young quarterback and pair that young quarterback up with a young offensive mind so that they can grow together on the offensive side of the football. Now, Albert Breer had mentioned that Jeff Ulbrich would be a viable candidate. I've talked about this here for a little while. This is a guy who the Niners tried to hire instead of Nick Sorensen going into 2024, but he was the DC under Saleh. Saleh didn't want to let him go. And once Saleh was fired, Ulbrich became the interim head coach. Obviously, the Jets had a regime change there. Raheem Morris hired him very quickly to be the Falcons' defensive coordinator. This Falcons defense last year was one of the worst in the NFL. They could not get after the quarterback, and they were bad all around. This year, we have seen some sizable improvements. Now, on offense, they have been a mess. On defense, not bad. 19th in points per game at 23.9. 16th in yards per game, 326.5. 17th in yards per play, 16th on third downs, 20th in the red zone. But it's not like they have a bunch of great defensive personnel. I do have a concern with the rushing defense because the Niners this offseason, especially in the draft with the players who they took, put an emphasis on rebuilding the rushing defense. Atlanta this year, not good against the run. 26th in yards per rush, 28th in rushes per game, 28th in rushing yards per game. But their pass defense, not bad. 7.4 yards per pass, that's 25th in the NFL. But they're 6th in passing yards per game given up at 188. And their sack percentage, last in the NFL last year, this year is number 3 at 10.73%. Ulbrich would be an external candidate, another internal candidate, a guy like Gus Bradley, who right now is the assistant head coach of the defense. I think this was part of Kyle Shanahan's thinking when they brought in Saleh, that if he ended up coaching well and the defense performed well and he got some opportunities to become a head coach after 2025, you have a guy in place who runs and has run a similar system in Gus Bradley, you could internally promote him and hopefully not really miss a beat. And obviously, Bradley has been a head coach for the Jags. He's been a defensive coordinator for many, many years across the NFL. Keep this name in mind. A rising internal candidate is a player who will remind you of that Legion of Boom defense back in the day. KJ Wright, who used to be a linebacker for Seattle, played, I believe, under Gus Bradley. He right now on this Niners staff as a defensive quality control coach. Some of you might say that's not a position that can be promoted from there to becoming defensive coordinator. Look, I know it's a different spot, but D'Amico Ryans was this team's linebackers coach. Saleh left. He became the DC, and he ended up being one of the top DCs in the game. And 2 years later, head coach of the Texans, and he's won a playoff game in each of his first 2 years as the head man with Houston. Will Saleh land a head coaching job this offseason? A simple yes or no. I want you to treat the comment section like a sports talk radio call-in line. This is the YouTube version of it. Share your thoughts with me. Join the conversation down below. Coming up next, Mac Jones trade buzz stays hot as we look ahead to the offseason. Teams who are in need of a quarterback, I guarantee you, they're going to be calling the Niners, asking what the price tag is for Mac. Let's first get to our sponsor. Today's 49ers Report is brought to you by PrizePicks. The hard-hitting football action, even better with PrizePicks. The weather might be changing, but the feeling of being right never gets old. So keep the season rolling on PrizePicks by getting $50 instantly in lineups when you play your first $5. This is America's #1 fantasy sports app. Join the millions of users and sign up today. PrizePicks always puts their users first. All withdrawals are fast, safe, and secure. PrizePicks offers Venmo, Apple Pay, MasterCard, and more for quick and easy deposits into your account this football season. This is the best way to win cash this football season. Which players are going off? Which players are overhyped? Make your picks in less than 60 seconds and turn your takes into cash all season long on PrizePicks. 2-pick power play for all of you legends out there. Christian McCaffrey, more than 47.5 receiving yards. Tet McMillan, more than a half rushing or receiving touchdown. Download the PrizePicks app today. Use the code CLNS. Get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code CLNS to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Let's talk some Mac Jones trade buzz here. For teams who are going to need a quarterback going into 2026, meaning they'll need a quarterback this offseason, Mac Jones could be a prime trade target this offseason. Now, I think that which quarterbacks declare for the draft is going to go a long way in deciding which teams are quarterback needy. And so let me pop up Mel Kiper's top 10 2026 quarterbacks. You have Dante Moore out of Oregon, #1 on his board. Fernando Mendoza out of Indiana. Ty Simpson, Alabama. Lenore Sellers, South Carolina. John Mateer, Oklahoma. Carson Beck, Miami. Yuck. Sam Levitt, Arizona State. I think he's leaving, might transfer. Sorry, Jack. Brandon Sorsby out of Cincinnati. Jaden Craig out of Harvard. And then Trinidad Chambliss out of Ole Miss. Other top quarterback prospects in this 2026 class: Jane Mayava, USC. Drew Aller, coming off a broken ankle, Penn State. Garrett Nussmeier, LSU. His stock has fallen. Josh Hoover out of TCU. I like him. And Diego Pavia, a winner who's turned around and resurrected that Vandy program. I just think he's a little bit too short. The issue, though, with this quarterback class, some of the top quarterbacks in this class, like a Dante Moore, like a Ty Simpson, who's only started 1 year, they could end up going back to school, meaning they don't enter the draft, which thus makes this quarterback class thin, which could make Mac Jones a prime trade target. And I think that Mac this year has resurrected his career. He's played really well. What a great story, going 5-3 with Brock Purdy hurt. And he has proven that he can be a legitimate starter in this league. And there's a reason why the guy was a first-round pick. His final year at Alabama, when he won a national championship under Nick Saban, he was unbelievable that year. And this year, what have we seen? Well, my scouting report on him, he's a big-bodied pocket quarterback, good pocket mobility. He has a strong arm with good touch. He was producing with so many injuries on offense, bad offensive line play, and a lack of running game. For a bulk of his starting stint, Kendrick Bourne, who was let go by the New England Patriots, was his wide receiver one. Now that the Niners are healthy at the position, Kendrick Bourne didn't get a lot of snaps last week for Brock Purdy. If you have a team that can run the ball successfully, Mac Jones can operate with play action, and he'd benefit from a good running game. And he's a quarterback who can play point guard and distribute the rock. Some people might say, Chase, the big play offense disappeared with Mac. That's because they didn't have any explosiveness or speed at the wide receiver spot. Remember the first preseason game when he threw that 50-yard pass to Jordan Watkins? The guy has a deep ball, and we've seen it. And this year, we also saw some accuracy. This is a big enough sample size where teams can look at the tape and say, we think that we can win with Mac Jones, and we think that Mac Jones can be productive. He completed nearly 70% of his passes, 2,100 yards, 13 touchdowns, 6 picks. Some of the picks were not on him. He had a quarterback rating of 97.4, and ladies and gentlemen, he was top 10 in the NFL in passing yards. Now, of course, if you do trade Mac Jones, question becomes this: what is his trade value? I really do think that given the position that he plays, the desperation level of a team needing a quarterback, and given the importance of the position, right, and how well he played this year, the Niners can get at least a second-round pick back for Mac Jones. At least a second-round pick back for Mac Jones. You might be able to swindle a team into giving you a second and a fourth, a second and a third. Because if that team gets the quarterback spot right with Mac Jones, he's also affordable next year, which goes into the value at just over $4 million. He can end up being a steal. And if you were to re-sign him to a long-term deal, I think that you could get Mac Jones on that type of Daniel Jones, Baker Mayfield, Sam Darnold type of deal between 30 and 40 million. When the quarterback market soon, a lot of these guys are going to be paid 60 to 70. Shoot, Dak is already at 60 plus. Mac Jones destinations. These are the teams that I think everybody should look out for here. Minnesota Vikings, if they trade for Mac Jones, say goodbye to J.J. McCarthy. The Miami Dolphins, Tua Tagovailoa stinks. I've been saying it for years. Arizona Cardinals, Jacoby Brissett has played well. Why? I think the Cardinals really like a more traditional pocket drop-back quarterback. Kyler Murray is not that, and I think Arizona could move off of Kyler. Carolina Panthers, Bryce Young's not that good. And if Dave Canales can get a good quarterback, look out. And the New York Jets, they might be paying Aaron Rodgers and Justin Fields to not play on their team next year. They're going to be in need of a quarterback. Now, obviously, some of these teams could draft a quarterback, but again, this draft class could be pretty thin if some of these quarterbacks go back to school. It is certainly an interesting topic that we have to discuss in the realm of this conversation as well. And the Niners can go down two avenues, right? Trade Mac Jones, keep Mac Jones. What it comes down to and what the Niners are going to have to decide on. Do the Niners want to side with wanting draft picks where they could get, let's say, a second and a fourth? Or do they want great quarterback security at excellent value, knowing that Mac Jones next year is under contract for just over $4 million? Brock Purdy has missed time in 2022 and gotten injured then. He got injured in 2024. He got injured again in 2025. The Niners are a playoff caliber team this year because of Mac Jones. And they have proven that they can win and compete and play at a high level with Mac Jones. So that's the great quarterback security element of it. But the Niners are in this phase right now where they didn't make a move at the NFL trade deadline because they wanted to keep their picks for the future. And obviously they want to build through the draft because these players are developmental pieces who are cost-controlled assets under contract for the next 4 to 5 years. And if you can get back a couple of picks for Mac, is that deal too good to turn down? There's also this. The Niners have a developmental quarterback on their roster who I think Kyle Shanahan really likes. And a lot of evaluators think that Curtis Rourke, the 7th-round pick out of Indiana, could end up being a really good quarterback in Kyle Shanahan's scheme. He's big. He can layer throws. He throws with good touch. He's not mobile, but last year played pretty well at Indiana. Hasn't played, obviously, this year. And the Niners haven't activated him because of that torn ACL that he played through last year. So he rehabs that. This becomes a redshirt year. He could end up being QB2, and then the Niners could draft a QB3, or they could try to bring in another Kyle Shanahan quarterback rehab project. A player like Sam Darnold, a player like Mac Jones, first-round picks who didn't work out, who come to the Niners to rehabilitate their careers, to learn this Shanahan offense, to learn from Shanahan and Brock Purdy, to get their careers back on track. These 5 players really fit that mold. Zach Wilson, Anthony Richardson, J.J. McCarthy, Bryce Young, Justin Fields. Let me throw another name out there. I don't think it's going to happen, but I will say this. What Jim Harbaugh did with Trey Lance in the preseason, pretty impressive. Lance looked so much better than how he looked with the Cowboys or with the Niners. He's going to be a free agent. Now, with the storyline and the baggage that would come with that, it's not going to happen, but it would be fascinating. Don't forget to give me a follow on X and Instagram at Chase_Senior, by the way. I'm always talking Niners every single day here on YouTube. I'm talking Niners and covering them on my personal pages as well.